And today we're going to be talking a little bit about cross-selling. There's a number of reasons why cross-selling is so effective, but I think all of us know that selling the same product to multiple customers is always more expensive than selling multiple products to one client. And so this is a goal that we really need to focus on in order to lower our customer acquisition costs. A lot of times I like to think of this as like a referral partner in the sense that you're referring business to yourself by selling multiple products to the same client. Now this is different from upselling. Upselling is great, and we always want to try to focus on that. But upselling is really just trying to get the customer to buy more of the same product, where this is trying to get the customer to buy multiple products. But one of the most effective means, or one of the most effective reasons why we use cross-selling in sales is because it actually lowers our customer acquisition costs by finding the path of least resistance. And so let me explain a little bit about how that works. So if you have multiple products that you can sell, what you need to determine is which product the client's most interested in purchasing, or ultimately what product is going to allow you to get in front of the customer. Because a lot of times if you approach the customer from one angle, the appointment ratio will be much lower than it would be with other angles. And so what cross-selling essentially does is it allows us to experiment with different products that ultimately yield the highest open rate or the highest appointment ratio. And ultimately, if you can cross-sell effectively, you can then sell the complementary products that work well with the product that you're leading with. So to put something together, really what you need to do is you need to have a lead exchange. A lead exchange is a group of referral partners that have complementary services that ultimately strengthen the product or service that you're selling. Now, the reason why a lead exchange is essential in a cross-selling sales strategy is because they're going to bring multiple products to the table, which then allows you to have more products to choose from in a cross-selling strategy. And so you may not necessarily sell POS systems, but if your referral partner does, then that works. And if that's the product that actually opens doors for you, then that's what you're going to lead with. And ultimately, you're going to sell your core product, but what you're really trying to accomplish is getting more appointments, which then leads to more cross-selling. Now, because we're talking about products and selling, it's always a good idea to have a purchasing group. We talked about this a few months back, but a purchasing group is essentially where you sell to a common group of companies, which is one of the most effective ways of lowering your customer acquisition costs is by focusing on a specific group of companies that have something in common, whether it's geography or vertical or customer preferences, and then pre-negotiating with vendors discounts on behalf of those companies, which essentially gives you a monopoly on pricing and makes it a lot easier to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. There's more information about that on the previous call that I mentioned. We won't get into too many details, but it's definitely something that you want to think about because that's also going to help you in the cross-selling strategy. Because again, you want to have a monopoly on different products and services, and you're going to be able to sell multiple products if it's all part of your purchasing group. And lastly, you're going to want to experiment. It's not always easy to tell which product is going to ultimately open more doors, but some products are going to be so much more effective than others in getting sales appointments. There's 3 rules that you want to think about when using products to open doors. It needs to be something new or has some type of a recent change associated with it. So a few years ago, SD-WAN was a big deal, and it was easy to open doors with that, but now everybody's kind of used to it, so you kind of need to move on to something else. So this is going to be a moving target. It needs to be specific. What I mean by that is it can't just be this ubiquitous, generic product that everybody that it just goes for everybody. So it's like selling Office 365 to everybody. That doesn't really help much. But, for instance, if their email gets blacklisted or their current email provider goes down, and then you reach out to them and say, would you be interested in using a different email service provider like Office 365? That would be specific. It also needs to be small. What I mean by small is that you can't do a complete overhaul and expect to get a good appointment ratio from that. So if you're going to try to rip and replace their entire IT system, you're typically not going to see a good appointment ratio. You have to start with something simple, something that's easy, something that can kind of break the ice a little bit, and then move in from there. And that's where that cross-selling and upselling can happen. Now, a few examples of things to look for. Fiber construction is a great one where you can talk to customers and say, look, one of the fiber providers in the area is doing some construction outside of your building. Would you like to know what the new options look like? Or if there's pricing updates, so promos, or if they've changed their pricing structure or they have a new product. These are the types of things that you want to keep an eye out for and let clients know about those types of changes. In the news lately, we've seen a lot of different hacks, so this would be something that would be considered a recent change or a trend that we're seeing. It's a lot of companies that work in the manufacturing space or companies in general, especially ones that are related to the companies that have been hacked. They would be most interested in having conversations about IT security. Again, outages is another great one. You can go to downdetector.com and find that new integration. So maybe they're using a platform that didn't used to talk to their phone system or maybe to their email system. And so this is an area that you can use in workforce optimization. We see a lot of different government regulations. This comes up. There's different news sites that you can find this at. But when those types of things happen, it's always easy to have conversations with people and say, look, let me help you navigate this. Let me help simplify this. There's always new tax incentives, market shifts like what we're seeing right now. We're seeing employee shortages. We're seeing minimum wage changes. And so there's always things that are happening. And that's the great thing about this is you just have to figure out how do the changes that we're seeing affect the customers that we're trying to get in front of. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a case study, we talked about this a little while back, but relevant to the employee shortage that the country is experiencing right now, and also the wage changes, there's been a lot of talk about a newer type of product, which is a virtual security officer. So essentially what they do is, for instance, if somebody comes and picks up cash at 3 p.m. every day from a retail shop, you can have a security camera with a live human being that watches it for that hour and helps walk them through back and forth, make sure that nothing happens. But it's essentially a virtual security officer there's a live human being on the other side, or it could just be a security system. But typically you can have lots of different types of security officers. But what this does is there's a lot of, because companies are lacking security officers, and also there's issues with wages and everything associated with that, these types of products are really relevant to companies who are struggling to find security officers. And it's a great segue into cross-selling into bandwidth. So maybe the security system, because it's cloud-based, it's going to need a more intelligent bandwidth, maybe SD-WAN, a better quality bandwidth, or IT security, since you're going to be relying more heavily on the backbone of the internal systems, cloud storage to back that up, especially if you're talking about HIPAA compliancy and other areas. But this is something that's a good example where there's a need, it's a newer product, and this can help address that. But at the same time, you can say, look, this is what we need. We need to take a look at your bandwidth options. We need to make sure that your IT security is up to par. And they're probably already thinking about these things anyways. And at the end of the day, because of the shift that you're doing, it's probably cost effective to even discuss those things. If you're not familiar with Ensemble, we do have a great tool. If you go to ensemble.com/data, we do have the ability to look up companies that are hiring for IT or for security guard jobs. You can just go to business filters and select security guard jobs and add any other additional filters to that. Again, that's ensemble.com/data. And so that'll pull a list of companies who are hiring security reps, which again, it layers on that specific relativity to the discussion that you're trying to accomplish. The other example is kiosks. So because of this employee shortage, it's easy to have a conversation about automation on the retail side. And so again, this is a great segue into IT security, maybe have it because people are going to be ordering over their phone or via text. It's also great to have phone integration discussions with their current phone systems. And so this would be an opportunity where you may not necessarily sell POS systems or credit card processing, but partnering with somebody who does. And because companies are interested in talking about this right now, would then allow you to cross-sell into other categories. And so this is where it's advantageous to have a lead exchange with a POS vendor who can then use their product to create appointments, which ultimately sells your products, but at the same time, they're setting appointments for them, you're setting appointments for them, but you're working together to get more appointments and then cross-sell. And at the end of the day, you both win. We've also included a new sales AI built into the upsell report. You can access it at upsellreport.com. You just need to put in a company name or website. And you'll notice at the bottom left-hand corner of the menu on the cross-selling tool, or on the upsell tool, there's a section called cross-selling. So the AI will look at all the recent changes and opportunities within any given company. And what it's going to do is it's going to outline any types of sales opportunities for cross-selling for any given company. Now, if cross-selling doesn't show up in your left-hand menu bar, it's just because the AI couldn't find anything. But in this example, you can see the company is not using an Office 365 or Gmail platform. And what we've seen as far as trends in the marketplace, most companies eventually move to that. So if they're not using it today, chances are they're thinking about it. In this case, you can also see that they have a contact center, so that's something to keep in mind in your discussions. They're experiencing growth. The growth is based off of job postings. And so you can also address that with your talking to them about POS systems. For instance, you can say, look, I've noticed that you've had some job openings for 60 days. It's probably, I realize that this is a struggle. I might have a solution for you. It talks about headlines. For instance, they're also selling one of their buildings. And so you may want to talk to them about that. They're rebranding, they're hiring for IT security, so you can talk to them about that. So this basically does a lot of the homework for you, but rather than just giving you raw data, it includes the strategies and also trainings related to those strategies to help you kind of create the any types of email templates or overall strategies and outlines that you would need to accomplish that. So again, if you just go to upsellreport.com, it'll be pretty easy to find that and run those reports. Next time we get together 2 weeks from today, we're going to be talking about food truck sales strategies. We're not selling food trucks, but we're using food trucks to generate business, and we'll talk about that next time. But again, thanks everyone for joining us today. I hope this has been helpful. Again, cross-selling is something that we all try to accomplish, but the main thing to keep in mind is that cross-selling allows us to get more appointments because it allows us to focus on multiple products that choose the product that ultimately opens the door. And that's going to change as time goes on. It just based off of what's happening in the industry, kind of like what we're talking about with those events and things that are new technologies and what the latest and greatest concerns are for the prospects that we're talking to. But as you run different experiments, you'll find that different products will have different results. But if you cross-sell effectively and choose the right product mix to bring into the equation, it will be much easier to get appointments, to get in front of clients, and make it a lot easier to sell. So again, thanks everyone for joining us today. I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.